when I was 17, I wrote a short film called The Dirk Diggler Story.
Did you?
Yeah, and I actually shot it on videotape.
Right.
And it had like a sort of like Zelig / Spinal Tap kind of format, this sort of fictional documentary, you know, which, you know, I was just a Zelig fan and a Spinal Tap fan. And I was also, you know, 17 years old, so I was completely immersed in watching porno, you know, in a kind of horny young boy way, but also in like a sort of in like a filmmaker way. Like I wanted to make movies, and here were these terrible movies, but that I also kind of got off on them, and they were so goofy and bad, you know. So sort of all those things were kind of, and I lived in the Valley too, in the San Fernando Valley, which is the capital of porn production. So it was always kind of peripherally around me. There was a warehouse near where I went to high school that had, it was like, here would be sort of like a portion of the warehouse that had some signage, you know, and then there'd be another one with a big sign, and then just like a stretch of warehouse that had no signage at all, but a ton of like expensive cars parked out in front. So you're like, what the fuck is going on inside that one with no sign, you know? And you know, it was clear they were making porno movies. So I just stuck this, and then the story obviously stuck with me for 9 years. You know, I was 9, 10 years. I was 20, 25, 26 when I made it. So,
that's your first film?
It's actually my second movie. Boogie Nights is my second movie. And Hard 8 or Sydney is my first one. This was a movie that I wrote and directed. It was my first movie. And I had the most horrendous time through the editing process. It was just like financed by people whose roots were in television, bad television, like Baywatch type television stuff, and who decided to try and get into movies. And it was just a situation where clearly they hadn't read the script, you know? And I delivered the movie, and they were sort of really confused, and all I could do was kind of point to the script and say, this is what I shot, this is what you paid for, this is what you agreed to. And this sort of argument would always come up, well, the script is not the movie, and the movie is not the script. It's like, but that's the agreement, you know, and I stuck to it.
What do you think about, if you've seen a lot of porn movies, what do you think about the level of, just the way they're made? Could they be better?
Oh yeah, I mean, God, there's so much to talk about here, because porno movies, they could be a genre, you know, and they should be a genre.
I think so.
You know, like, let me put you this way. There's a whole series of John Holmes movies, and they're called like the Johnny Wad, and it was this character he created where he was this sort of suave, sophisticated detective. It's a lot like the Brock Landers stuff that Dirk Diggler creates. It's sort of all modeled after that. And he's this kind of Humphrey Bogart detective, and he's a little bit James Bond, a little bit Sam Spade, you know? And just think about that structure. They're essentially murder mysteries, right?
Right.
But they're also fuck films. So you're on the hook, and this sort of it's just pure story, and you're just pure what's going to happen next. I want to see you fuck. I want to see him defuse the bomb. It's exciting. It's like
well made.
Well, they don't really pull. They pull that off because they're actually sexy because they're on film, and certainly just it helps that the girls are. At least a natural, you know what I mean? If you're looking at it as a pure sort of hormone boy way, you're like, you know, my hormones go towards like, oh, she's pretty, and no, she doesn't have huge, enormous fake tits and this flat washboard stomach that somehow doesn't feel real to me. It's like watching science fiction. I mean, it's a sci-fi movie at that point, you know. There's girls like, there's like a little zit on her butt, you know what I mean? She's got a little tummy, you know what I mean? And her tits aren't out to here. And you're sort of watching sort of natural, and the same thing with the guys. It's kind of like, the guys are not appealing in porno today.
No.
And I'll be the first to say, yeah, that guy is sexy looking, or I want to see him fuck. But there's like fucking robots, you know what I mean? So if you start with the acting, and not even just the acting or the dialogue, just sort of physically looking at these people who are just chiseled to perfection, and there's nothing you can relate to. You instantly, it doesn't make sense to you. It's watching space aliens. Okay, so there's that. Now with the Johnny Wad stuff, it's pretty, it's pulled off because it also has a sense of humor about itself. And when it doesn't, boy, it's really funny to laugh at. But it's also really funny to laugh with, you know, when it knows. It knows it's not taking itself too seriously, and it does a good job. And John Holmes is quite an actor. He's really natural, you know. But the main thing is that a lot of the sex doesn't happen for the camera. And that's the thing, is that, I mean, that's what most porno actors complain about, is that every position in porno is completely uncomfortable because it's completely unnatural. It's for the camera. It's like having an actor, like, can you cheat a little bit this way?
Sure.
And they're
No,
going,
but that's not my eyeliner.
exactly.
Yeah.
And they feel like stiff or something.
Yeah.
Porno acting and sex scenes in the 70s were much more sort of, let the camera figure it out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So the camera's a bit more sort of handheld and a little bit sort of more renegade in trying to get into the spot to get the good juicy close-ups that you want to get. Somehow comes out feeling more sexy and natural.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
But nowadays, you rent a porno movie and it's just, they're in sort of contortions and positions that are clearly guided towards the camera. But you can't, don't make a fucking bit of sense, or, and don't come off as sexual in any way, you know? I mean, the goal of a porno movie, I think, should be to give you a boner.
It's almost like we have a duty here. You know, somebody should be making better stuff here that doesn't leave you quite so devastated.
Right. Well, I think some of that devastation comes from just watching the sadness in a lot of the performers' faces that you see nowadays. I mean, you really kind of instantly go to, who are they, how did they get there, and how can I help?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The sort of save me instinct, you know? And there's a lot of sort of save me faces in that industry that are just kind of going, you know, almost like they're looking into the lens going, save me, wink, wink, you know? You know, in the late 60s, sort of early 70s, when sort of porn was sort of fashionable and okay to see in the theater, you know, as a sort of date movie. You know, the thing, and you know, Deep Throat was the highest grossing independent film of all time, you know. Behind the Green Door was happening, but Midnight Cowboy was also happening.
Yeah.
See, what I think, what would have happened had it not been for video, is that more and more the sort of porn movie would have come closer to, you know, a sort of legitimate, you know, traditional narrative stuff. Traditional narrative stuff moving more towards sort of porno
like it
elements.
kind of did in other world cinemas, like in Japanese, like Aino Corrida and
or Spain
and French movies, on what Pedro does.
Totally, Pedro does it, or even in Betty Blue. One example I've used before is, and it's not sort of doing it to be salacious or anything like that, it's saying like, how interesting would it have been to see Forrest Gump and Robin Wright, you know, and that Robin Wright character, make that baby that we see at the end, that sex scene. How does Forrest Gump have sex? You know what I mean? That's a great character, I think.
Yeah.
And it's not trying to sort of just give you a boner to show you Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, you know, see her tits in bed. It's going, what could be more sort of human, or what could be more of a like revelation of a character than watching them have sex? I mean, that says a lot about someone, I think, is how they sort of touch another person in bed. I wrote a scene that I kind of wish I'd filmed that I know shouldn't have been in the movie of Boogie Nights, but it was for Don Cheadle's character Buck and his wife Jessie. They decide to have sex, you know, at night. They're sort of lying in bed, and they try and have sex real. They kind of suggest to each other, like, maybe we could try and do this like real, like. And Don starts to fuck up a little bit because he starts saying, "Oh, baby, yeah, baby," you know. And she's like, and then he kind of catches himself, and then she starts doing it. It was a very sort of funny, small, tender scene where you kind of watch these two people who are so caught up. We didn't shoot it. I wrote it and we rehearsed it, and it was great. But I knew it would never be in the movie. You know?
I think that's really strong.
I couldn't get it in. I couldn't get it in there in any place where I knew that I thought it was sort of taken care of in other places. This sort of like porno people trying to be real people, but. It's so funny because I've been with sort of a situation where you're with a girl and suddenly you're like, where did this Elizabeth Berkley Showgirls sex thing come from? Do you think that's sexy somehow? Do you think I'm responding to that? Do you think this flopping around that you're doing is making me excited? Do you know what I mean? And I think there is porno movies have trained a lot of young people how to have sex, unfortunately.
What would you assess the time span on Boogie Nights?
We started shooting in July of '96, shot till October, and then edited from October to October.
Right.
So in '97.
Yeah.
So October '96 we started cutting, finished everything, a week before it came out. Wait until the last minute.
And your first movie?
First movie I shot in 28 days.
Right.
And then only had 3 weeks to do a director's cut, but then sort of got in the whole melee of fighting with this company, which lasted a year essentially,
Right.
and backed me into Boogie Nights because I thought my first movie had been taken away from me completely, and the only way that I could deal with that was to go make another movie. So I started prepping Boogie Nights, but in the middle of prepping Boogie Nights, I had sort of essentially stolen back my kind of work print elements and on Sydney. And created.
How did you do that?
Well, I had a dupe. Print made, you know. So I was able to submit that dupe work print to Cannes. And when Cannes saw my cut of the film, they invited it to come in un certain regard, you know. So it was this big deal, and I called Reicher up and I said, listen, I know I have a sort of, it's your property, you guys own it, you know, I have pride of authorship, but certainly not pride of ownership here. You guys own it, but I took my dupe work print, I submitted it to Cannes, it's in. This is a big mistake if you guys don't give me some money, let me finish the movie. And they're like, no.
Really?
We're not giving you, we don't care if it's Cannes, we don't care about anything else. The great thing is that they're like a foreign sales company. They go there to sell their product, you know. They go to Cannes and in the marketplace, and here they have a movie that's kind of in competition for un certain regard, you know.
Yeah.
And they're like saying, no, we don't want to be there. First of all, they weren't going to let me go. You know, they weren't going to let me take, you know, even, and I didn't want to go into the fucking Grand Palais with my dupe work print. So I said, let me have the original negative elements. They'd already cut negative on their version, by the way. So I had to essentially take, I couldn't just match up my dupe work print to my negative. I mean, they'd already cut negative.
Presumably they'd cut into your shots.
Exactly.
So how did you deal with that?
I had to go to alternate takes, which, you know, weren't as good sometimes, but essentially, because there's 3 or 4 very long Steadicam shots, and of course they cut, you know, right into the middle of it.
Can you splice back in now?
You can, but you lose a frame. And it's kind of a great study in what one frame is, because a lot of times you go along and you're like, don't miss it, we feel good, and you're cruising along and you're taking your frames off because you're fixing it and you don't feel it, and then you get to one and you're like, that one frame makes all the difference.
Sure.
It's insane, you know, and you don't want to feel like it does. But it just makes me think of this sort of issue of like, you know, it's funny because we were talking about being in Brussels, and you know, where that sort of, this line is like, you know, the concept that, you know, no director has final cut, projectionists have final cut, you know, which, you know, I mean, theaters are so fucked, you know what I mean, and you want to kind of go around and go, every theater in America, I mean, this THX is the biggest scam going. It's like, THX doesn't mean anything. It means that George Lucas gets a check to say, to write it, you know, for some theater that's, now we're THX approved, so it sounds good, but it's bullshit. And not to mention all the sort of projectors, you know, you spend all this time and you want it to look right and everything else. But I gotta say that when I kind of come down off my high horse a little bit, I like to kind of, my girlfriend and I went to, like 4 or 5 months after Boogie Nights came out, just walking by this theater on the 3rd Street Promenade, you know, and I was like, let's go in and look at it. And it was this terrible Fuji print, and it just looked terrible. And the scope, the ratio was all fucked up.
That's because New Line have a Fuji deal.
New Line have a Fuji deal, which I've now...
In Canada.
Yeah, but now I got rid of that.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. I said, there's no way I'm making a movie here with you guys again unless I get all Kodak prints. And so they signed off on it, which is good. And anyway, so I go to watch this, I'm watching this Fuji print, and it just sounds fucking terrible, and I'm kind of freaking out. But it was long enough after the movie was finished, you know, that I started sort of calming down. I wasn't trying to control every element. And I said, if I can't enjoy this bad Fuji print, this not even good mono kind of soundtrack that's playing here, have I done my job in terms of making the movie? You know, this movie should be able to come off. The story should be able to work. Was it a fucking Fuji print, or it's not even barely mono? You know, what do I do here? Which one do I want to be? Do I want to be the guy that has a fucking Kodak print in here and it's precise and perfect, and that's the only way it can work? Or do I want to be the guy that goes, yeah, I know it looks like shit, it sounds like shit, but you liked it, didn't you? You know. You know what, I want to get my slice
Get your
of pizza,
man. Sorry.
I just want to get one. Oh shit. This would be a taco. I'm a young filmmaker with fucking pizza in the interview. Yeah. It's funny because also too, I was with, actually with Quentin Tarantino the other night, and we were sort of going through his prints, or watching some prints and stuff, and he had a Reservoir Dogs 16 millimeter print, because I guess they make sort of 16 prints for like prisons and stuff now, you know, and it makes me want to get one of my movie, you know. Anyway, he shot it Super 35 scope, you know, and but this was a sort of 1:3:3 16 print. And I was like, Quentin, you're not really going to watch this. I mean, I said, let's put it on. I want to see what it looks like, you know. And then I realized that it wasn't scope. And I said, you're not going to watch your widescreen movie in 1:3:3, are you? He's like, no, it'll be great. And when it started up, it was so kind of exciting because it had that kind of like shitty...
Was it locked off, or did they pan and scan?
No, they didn't pan and scan. It was locked off,
wow.
you know. And it was kind of exciting because it was 16, and it felt like a different movie. It felt like like a student film had done shot for shot Reservoir Dogs with the same cast. You know what I mean?
Were you happy with your film?
Very.
The Boogie Nights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't say that it's the plan. You know what I mean? And I can't even think at this point, because I'm still so kind of wrapped up in it, believe it or not, that what I would change. I know there's probably a couple things I'd like to have done differently, but it's not like I didn't stick to my plan. Well, the idea of the firecrackers actually comes from two places. It's a distant piece of background action in a movie called Putney Swope, directed by my idol, Robert Downey, Sr. He made it like the late 60s. I mean, it's just an incredible film. And there's this scene where this guy gets off the elevator, Wing Sony is coming to this new mousetrap device, and he's got this sort of sidekick. And this guy's behind him and just sort of pap, 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 and then he says 3 or 4 words, and then they get back on the elevator.
Yeah.
And I was like, I called Bob up, and I was like, this is the greatest fucking thing, and I want to take it, I want to run it through a whole scene and make it foreground action, you know, and I want to, like, say that it's my idea. And he was like, great. And another thing is that my dad was in early television, actually, in Cleveland. Actually, not early television, but sort of like a long time ago, mid-60s. And he kind of was this horror talk show host. He would, like, come on and introduce sort of bad horror films, you know, Beast from 50,000 Fathoms, this kind of stuff. And he was one of the first guys to like chroma key himself inside the movie, you know, and like comment on how bad the dialogue was and how bad the movie was and all this kind of stuff. And he would constantly blow stuff up with firecrackers, you know, and just kind of like take like little skeleton skulls and like throw firecrackers at them. And so the combination of those two sort of father figures with firecrackers, there it is in the movie, you know.
I mean, one of the things I loved about your film was the fact that you never ever took the right turn on a cliche. You know, everything's cliched in your film.
Yeah,
it's fucking great.
Yeah,
you know, but you then there's a sort of real gentleness about it.
Yeah,
which I found really kind of moving, actually.
Yeah,
because I'm so fed up with the way films are going. I really don't like movies anymore.
I'm. You know what? I don't know. It's so funny because I want to be with you, but I don't. I'm scared to say that because I feel like I'm bad mouthing the cause, even though I know in my ass, in my back pocket, it's like there's shit out there. Yeah, it sucks, but it's almost like I want to keep it to myself because I don't want anyone to see our collective cards. It's like, yeah, we're fucking up like crazy, and I wish it wasn't going on. You know.
But I don't think we are fucking up like crazy. I mean, I think, you know, there's a this school and there's a that school and there's a this school, and you know, ultimately it's about storytelling, it's about narrative drive, and that will win through. True,
but don't you think so? I mean, I like the action genre. That little club is fucking up lately, and I love those movies, and I want them to succeed, and I want to see good action adventure films. You know, I wanted Godzilla to be wonderful. I mean, I love monster movies. And I wanted that like, it seems that department is really not, is not sort of...
Yeah, but that department at the moment is a committee filmmaking process.
Which is, but that's unfortunate to me.
That's like the sacrifice that cinema has made. Okay, guys, you smart boys and the odd girl, you can have that genre.
I know.
Because that's money and everything, and then the
But it's really unfortunate. I mean, that's unfortunate. I don't want to fluff that off as that's just the way that is. I think it's unfortunate because there's There is such a thing to be made as an intelligent Godzilla movie, an intelligent sort of like action-adventure film. They're out there to be made, and it's unfortunate that sort of genre is getting killed by committee. I mean, it's almost like right around the corner the romantic comedy will be next. Well, it's happening right now, actually.
They turned that corner.
Yeah, they're getting them right now, and next will be
I could name a few. Yeah.
Oh, I could name a few this summer. You know, I've wanted to for a long time make just. You know, go to a comedy, you know, a straight comedy, a real romantic comedy in the most traditional way, you know. I mean, fuck it up in an untraditional way, but a traditional sort of dive into it thinking it was traditional.
Yeah.
But, and maybe it's in reaction to something about Mary, but I'm ready to go like right away.